Is
Good?
hair and makeup out that way?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
You're tuned into From the Annex. Keep it locked.
I'm the Librarian. Drop the beat.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
Good, man.
Great. My name is Peter.
also known as Too Tough Peter.
Allegedly.
He's also known as the Yoshitoshi guy.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
we'll get into later.
And also the sketchy guy from Vienna, for those who know. I met Andy early 1995. We both worked at record stores, and one day he just showed up at mine, worked at a new and used shop, and he showed up at my shop with a box of promos, and the rest is really history. I met Daniel about a year later. My first Too Tough event was Dementia in 1996, which also happens to be the first tech step set ever played, according to Trace, I believe.
First
And
tech step set played in DC,
I think ever.
you mean? Oh, ever.
I could be wrong. Maybe we can edit that.
No, I mean, we should claim it.
And
Let's do it.
it's been a long ride, man. I encourage everybody to revisit the interview with Andy as well, because all me and Daniel are going to do is really add color to that. And losing Andy, it still is a huge loss, because he was like such an original person and just so strong-willed, and it's a loss, man. It was a great ride with him, though. It's memory after memory. Really great guy, and he did a lot of people owe him quite a bit.
For sure. Rest in peace, Andy. Peter, Too Tough Peter. Many people know that myself and Andy started Too Tough back then, but Peter has always been an integral part of Too Tough. More back behind the scenes type of thing, but he's always been a driving force of what we've done. So I am Daniel, also known as DJ Slant,
Legend.
and co-founder of Too Tough Productions, representing drum and bass in Washington, D.C.
I want to step back from both of you really quickly. Like, before Too Tough, and how did you all get into rave and music and DJing?
I'll start here. So my brother Ty, many people know as Ty T, from the rave and trance scene, so to speak. He was a DJ when he was in high school. I was in middle school. So, always looking up to my older brother. I was always fascinated with turntables. He had 1200s back when I was in like 7th grade. And I would always play around with records. And I was into the different music that he was into as well back then. A lot of, alternative back then, but, leading into the electronic time period. But I certainly remember one of my first mixes was mixing New Order Blue Monday with True Faith. I think there was like a few bars where it was just like the kick drum, and I was like, oh, I think I can try to mix this here. But yeah, I was a big fan of New Order, Depeche Mode, some industrial bands. Me Beat Manifesto stands out to me because of their breakbeats. And as I was going through my brother's records, I would be pulling out the ones that featured breakbeats. So back then there were some suburban bass tracks. Kicks Like a Mule comes to mind. Awesome 3, I think. And then other tracks that were like, even Masters at Work were doing, like Kenny Dope he was doing some breakbeat tracks that I may have played at 45 to match the tempo. All of that kind of evolved into, finally getting into finding some reinforced records back then at Tower Records and Beyond and Roughage Crew, Suburban Bass were the kind of labels that we were able to find at Tower Records and stuff back then. So for me, that was early high school, like 9th, 10th grade. And it just kind of evolved from there.
What era of year was that?
So 1990, I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
It was probably more like 92 where some of those releases were coming out. So 92, 93, 94, I was a senior in high school. And by then I had already started to collect records and the CD singles and kind of get into the music then.
In that 93 era, was that when you were buying records at Tower Records? Is that how you met Andy?
We did meet back around 92, 93-ish. He wasn't quite working at Tower Records yet, but we did meet out at the raves and clubs that we were going to. Peter, what about? Well, Peter's been into music all his life.
Yeah, my whole life I've just been a music fan. When I was real young, mostly just the radio stuff, but I've always been in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Virginia, but pretty much the only thing I've ever done in Virginia is sleep and buy gas. And, Daniel mentioned Tower Records. I mean, I was times a week, looking at magazines, going through records, just music, indie music. In the late 80s, I was really going to a lot of the hardcore shows in DC, a lot of the Discord bands, Grey Matter, Fugazi, Shudder to Think, Ignition. Just DC's always had an underground music of strong, with go-go, with hardcore. The DC was an early adopter to the rave thing. So it's always been something going on in the city musically. I worked in record stores for about 15 years, luckily. So about 1990, you work in record stores, you tend to hear things early, promos, whatever stuff. You're surrounded by music, you're going to hear stuff you never heard before. So it's that experience, it's exposed me to so much stuff. But yeah, I was going to a lot of hardcore shows, the occasional go-go. I was telling Daniel earlier, I think before that, my first exposure to real electronic music per se was I would go to the Fifth Column on Monday nights, and it was Michael Meacham. And that was really my first exposure to DJ, electronic music culture. And through that, you'd go outside at the end of the night and your car would have 50 flyers on it, fever flyers and all these things. And it's just a whole new world that opened up, and I think I was telling Daniel earlier, one of the first tracks I remember hearing that really got my attention was an Omni Trio tune. And after that, it's a wrap, man. I mean, it's just like, the break beats. I was an early fan of hip hop and the break beats, and it's just it's just a natural fit, ever since. Bought turntables probably late 94, 95 and started buying records. Would go to like a lot of the towers, and as well as Music Now when it was on, between 7th and 8th in that little, before it was on M Street.
F Street.
Yeah, it was F Street.
Which is also where the Fifth Column was.
Yeah.
Funny story about the Fifth Column, actually. Back in high school, I was a senior, 94. I went to one of those Monday night things, and I don't know how I got in, but, it was just electronic music or industrial electronic-ish, and I saw my PE teacher at the bar, and she looked at me, I looked at her, and it was like kind of pretending like we didn't know each other. So every week after that in high school at PE, it was weird. You know what I mean? Because like we just didn't acknowledge each other about it. But she was probably like, "What are you doing here?"
And you were like, "What are you doing?"
Exactly.
How you doing? That was a great club, though. That was a really cool space.
Yeah.
It had reggae down in the basement, the dance hall down in the basement. Michael on the main floor, and it had the little bars upstairs in the balcony. It was a great space. I think it was an old bank, actually.
Yeah.
But now it's like a restaurant or something, which is another thing. DC has changed so much.
Yeah.
Like all those places are gone. But, speaking of being young, I met Cassie at the Fifth Column.
Oh, wow.
And she probably was only, 16 or 17 then.
Yeah.
Really young. So I don't know what their door policy was, but it was different.
Yeah.
And
rest in peace to Cassie.
Yeah, rest in peace to Cassie, man. Great, beautiful girl. What a personality. But she was actually, me and her, that was my partner in crime for my early introduction to the parties. We went to a couple of the bass rushes and some other things. So it was mainly through being on F Street and coming out at 2 or 3 in the morning and seeing all these things. It's like, what the hell? And that was my introduction into the electronic scene, which is a really, really strong scene in DC. There's a lot to do.
Yeah, I think
a lot of parties.
The first time I met you officially was probably at Where the Wild Things Are.
U Street.
When you were with Cassidy. And that was one of the first weekly drum bass parties in DC. And I was a resident there. So yeah, big up to Where the Wild Things crew.
Yeah, and like I said, I knew Andy from probably about a year or so before I met Daniel, before he, gatekeeped him before he introduced me to him. But, it's funny. Andy's the center of a lot of things.
For sure.
A lot of things for me personally and other people too. But for me personally, he was... he pretty much let me in. I can remember being in a car on Constitution Avenue, probably early 96 somewhere. And I was like, bro, you gotta put me down. I want to be down. I want to be in Too Tough. I want to do it. He's like, I don't know. You better watch what you're asking for. It's not all that it looks like. I was like, I want to be down. And, 96 Dementia. I worked the doors there, me and Ness.
You want to grab that flyer, the Dementia flyer? So you're saying this was your first?
This was my first official helping out at a Too Tough event.
No.
At the old Greyhound bus station on New York Avenue. And, since then it's been a hell of a ride.
That's awesome. Who is a part of the original Wild Things crew?
So that was Rob One was also a resident at some point.
Sean and Terry, right?
I think John Tab and the R, or was it just?
I think that was a little later. I remember you and Rob One for sure.
Yeah, I recall either. I think John Tab was part of it.
He may well have been.
He asked me to be a resident, that they wanted to get a weekly going. And that was one of the first, yeah.
Yeah, U Street in the 90s was different.
Yeah.
I think Coffee House was what, like 11th, 10th in U, 9th in U, 10th in U.
Yeah. The thing about it back then, because you know the music wasn't as popular, it was still growing. The
Super
smaller
underground.
scene within the rave scene, the jungle drum and bass scene, whatever you want to call it, was smaller, but it was getting attention. But I mean, the best night we could get of the week was a Monday night, right? Like for the clubs and bars, like we didn't know this.
Yeah, weekends where we could never get a weekend.
They wouldn't give us a Thursday or Friday night, so a Monday night was the best. And I mean, there was definitely support for these weekly events. But yeah, even when we started, it was like a Monday.
Yeah,
a
or
Monday
Wednesday,
night, one of
right,
our first
right.
weeklies.
Even to this day, not too much weekend stuff.
You guys have alluded to this, but talk to me a little bit more about what DC was like back then in the 90s in comparison to now. I mean, I think that some people that will watch this will obviously know, but just paint the picture of what DC was like back then.
Completely different city than it is now. Completely different. Very few things are still the same. Very few things are still the same. Clubs are gone. Warehouses are gone. One of the thing that is the same is, 930 Club on V Street, up there on 9th Street. It used to be West Radio Hall, and there was some parties there. But that building is pretty much probably the only thing that is consistent with my experience in DC from the early to mid 90s on to now. Everything else is gone. The old Greyhound bus station on New York Avenue is gone. Red is gone. Local 15 is gone. 18th Street Lounge is gone. Dragonfly is gone. It's a completely different place now than it was.
Yeah.
It was a grimy city back then. I mean, there was downtown, and then it was really not built up at all like it is now. 9th Street, 9th and F, we were talking about earlier, used to have porn theaters and hookers and crackheads on it, like literally at 9th and F. But you go there today, and it's like Shake Shack and, like a real nice hotel and the National Gallery of Art.
Yeah.
But it was dicey back then. After dark, it was dicey.
And that's what attracted us.
Yeah.
Music scene wise and dance scene wise, there were some raves at the West before it became the 930 Club, right? For me, one of my first, besides the Fifth Column, tracks. Had a Thursday night that was really popular for, I guess, dance and electronic-ish music, house, techno-ish music. Scott Henry was a resident at tracks on Thursdays for a while. And then there were...
That's Navy Yard now, for
Yeah.
people who know. But back then it was just warehouses and sketchiness.
Yeah. And there were, early in the 90s, there were more, like, I guess, illegal raves that were in warehouses, different types of venues. As those were getting busted, the rave scene kind of moved into clubs out of necessity for having a venue that wouldn't get busted. So many to mention. But definitely Fever was an early successful club event based in Baltimore.
Sunday Mass.
Sunday Mass was an offshoot, also at the Paradox. Of course, Buzz in DC started early. So, maximum respect to Scott Henry and Charles Feelgood for leading the scene back then, inspiring a bunch of us to do our own things, supporting us, both as promoters and by booking me at many of the events. And Scott and Levin from Buzz for bringing that to DC as well.
Do you remember before Nation? Buzz did one night at the Ritz on East Street. You remember that? And then I think it went to
there was the pre-Nation venue was
the East Side.
Yeah,
remember that?
It was down by the wharf.
Yes, yeah, Half Street Southwest.
Half Street, yeah.
Different city, man. Completely different city.
Yeah. And then as in the 90s, as it evolved, some bigger festivals happened. Like that's when some of the armory parties happened, where it seemed like it was just an exponential growth and then explosion, from the early 90s to the late 90s, I would say. Late 90s and early 2000s.
A lot going on.
Was a big influential time for
a lot of crews, a lot of music,
electronic music scene, of all genres, but certainly drum and bass was a fun part of that and an exciting part of that.
Were some of those original parties mixed genre, or was it? I mean, that's a leading question. I know the answer, but on the other hand, like I find that a lot of parties now are one genre specific. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that back then they were oftentimes you'd have like split rooms. And so you'd have your house room, your trance room, the DnB tent, was that, when do you think that changed here in DC?
I think, I think, the evolution is certainly interesting to look back on. Back in the early days, back in the 90s, even, at Fever, there's a main room and there's a side room. At Buzz, there was a main room and a side room. So I think they did a great job at, bringing in different DJs of different genres and mixing it up. So yeah, I see what you're saying. It wasn't as segregated maybe, or limited to a certain genre all night.
Jungle was always in the small room or the side room
at the beginning
with the with the less worthy sound system or the less attractive features, but it didn't matter. It was represented fully.
Yeah, but as things progressed, we made it into the main rooms.
Oh, absolutely.
And at those times, those were pretty big moments for our scene, for the DC scene. For instance, when a drum and bass headliner played at the main room of Buzz, or I remember the first time I played at the main room at the Paradox at Fever. It was actually Sunday Mass, but still counts. But that was such a cool experience. After going there for years and years and watching Scott Henry and Charles Fielding play up there, to be able to play in that main room, because the setup at the Paradox, amazing sound system, amazing DJ booth, right? The rotary mixer was a little weird, but yeah, such a honor and a privilege to have played there.
In those early days, especially, like who all consisted to make, or what was the makeup of the team for Too Tough at that point?
Well, Andy and I were the main two. We co-founded it in '94. Started our first events in late '94, early '95. And along the way, years after, we met Peter. My best friend Chris at the time was also a kind of behind the scenes support helper, and then There were some resident DJs and MCs that started playing for us and representing us. That includes DJ Stress, MC Ness, and MC Mecca back then. We had some kind of semi-residents through the years who always supported us. DJ Trace is certainly one of the most important and influential back then. He supported us and connected us with a lot of different DJs and artists and, members of the scene. Double A and Twist from Montreal were friends in residence for a while. Sean Overload. I'm gonna forget people.
There's been kind of different incarnations throughout the years of
Chadwick, DJ Jaway,
Bijou.
She was a resident, and lots of other DJs who from the DC scene who supported us would often play at our events. But behind the scenes, it was Andy, myself, Peter, pretty much kind of like guiding things.
Now, was that also operations-wise, or was there another layer of people that were running operations, or are you is this all DIY? You're all doing it together and building it out?
I think it was pretty much us. Yeah.
Yeah, operationally, of course, the other residents, they would help support and promote play shows under the Too Tough flag.
A lot of promoting, man. A lot of flyers on windshields and areas and.
Yeah, pre-internet times, promotion was different, right? It was going out to the clubs when they're closing out to hand flyers to people who are leaving the club or flyering cars. So yeah, I mean
that was a lot of. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There was a lot of Andy too. Andy would be like, "Look, meet at my house, and then we're going to Buzz, and then we're going to the Golden Triangle, and then we're going, to Southeast, and just from like 2 to 3:30, 4 in the morning, car, windshield wiper, car, for years and years. But that's just the way it was back then.
Who's the first graphic designer that you guys had as far as like building your logo, but then also doing the flyers?
So the logo was designed by one of Andy's friends back then. He did the logo. Our friend John Bowen was one of the first designers we had.
Probably our best.
Yeah, we've had some pretty good designers supporting us. John Bowen, for sure, he kind of gave us... I just always loved his artwork. It was kind of abstract and... I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's very original.
Yeah.
And good for him. He ended up in Goldie's book, Metalhead's book.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, good for John.
Chadwick was a important designer for us, too. That's DJ Jaway. So he was like a DJ and a graphic designer for us. Avik, DJ 7, he did some flyers for us in the mid-2000s or 2010-ish. But yeah, we've always had some great support with artists and designers helping us.
What was the first party beyond the weeklies or monthlies that you guys threw?
Well, I think so we did do some one-off drum and bass raves, so to speak, and then we did weeklies, and then we'd always throw in some one-offs here and there. So I think the very first would be this rinse out one here. This was June 17th, 1995. This was after the infamous snowstorm party that Andy talked about. And I echo what Peter said earlier. For y'all who may not have watched it, the Librarian did a great interview with Andy years ago now, right? Wow.
Highly
Yeah.
recommended.
Highly recommend listening to that and maybe coming back and visiting this one. But yeah, for this party, it was AK-1200, who out of Orlando, Florida, was one of the first U.S. drum and bass DJs that we knew of, and that was really championing the sound. Double A and Twist from Montreal, Carl K from Philly, myself, Method 1 from Richmond, and Seamus, MC Dub 2. That was June 17th, 1995. I was just out of high school back then. And then, 95, 96, 97, we threw some pretty crazy events looking back. Let's see, this one was December 1995. Renegades in Baltimore. Through DJ Trace, we met Justin from Lucky Spin Records and DJ Recordings. Trace had a number of tracks released on those labels, and this one had, I don't know, is this good? Can you see this? Groove Rider, his first ever exclusive appearance in the U.S., apparently.
First ever.
LTJ Bookham, who didn't make it, but DJ Rap was the replacement, I guess, which is kind of wild to think about back then. Trace, MCGQ, that's when the first time we met him. So that was December 1995 in Baltimore. Funny story about the Renegades party is that, and Andy mentioned this in his interview, that the sound was blown that night. Unfortunately, I think it was at the venue where they held Rise, which was another weekly event in Baltimore, weekly or monthly. But yeah, unfortunately, that sound system was not that great that night. But I remember Groove Rider, the professional that he is, he was looking pretty fresh in his outfit, but he was like walking around and trying to fix the sound system for us. And like, I mean, I was just out of high school, right? 18, 19 years old. We really we were really new to throwing parties and events, right? And we just assumed that the sound system would be fine, right? And it wasn't that night, unfortunately, but it was kind of embarrassing, but cool to see Groove Rider working with the sound system engineer, trying to fix the sound before his set. We were able to, although that may have been a disappointment with sound, the very next year, this was in 1996, this event, Guarana, was thrown by us and Lonnie Fisher of Ultra World. He graciously allowed us to do a makeup event at his warehouse, and Groove Rider came back and played for us. Diesel Boy, DB, Carl K, and MC Dub 2, Method 1, and Slipmaster J Justin from the UK. And this was a wicked night. That, hearing Groove Rider play in a warehouse in Baltimore, pretty intimate setting. The sound was great for that one. And that was the first time he played this Boimering tune that just sticks in my head from that event. So having these legends come play, and we recorded many of the sets, listening to the mixtapes afterwards, and not getting a tune that was played until 10 years later. That, that's nuts, right? Like, or some of the tracks were never released at all. But yeah, those events were very inspirational.
We're talking about Groove Rider, you know what I mean? I mean, Rage really wasn't that too far in the past, just a couple years, a matter of months. And here he was in Washington, D.C. It's just like...
Yeah, a godfather of the jungle drum bass music as we know it today. So to have that support back then, we were privileged,
I can't even imagine that. Like, actually, you said that you record the tapes, but also from hearing those recordings over again, once the, I guess, energy of the night has gone away, but also being a student of DJing, both watching the DJ in the mix and then listening to tapes back again, what were some of the big things that you took away from these living legends that you guys were bringing into America for the first time?
Yeah, for sure. Groove Rider back then he was already, like, to me, he was already a legend, right? From just hearing his mixtapes, seeing all the flyers and events that he's played on. Definitely just learn a lot just by watching him and seeing how just focused and just how into it, like he's just in the zone when he's spinning. And then like you're alluding to afterwards, being able to then re-listen to the mixes that he was doing, how he like programmed his set, and then just the music that he chose to play, right? Always, the music that they're playing is music that they're pushing, right? Like maybe the most innovative tracks at the time that he's pulling from his bag. So yeah, and then just taking him to the airport and being able to just chat with him,
interacting with him.
Yeah, just how they are as a
coolest people, man. You
as a professional.
You get nervous, because you go to Tower and you read like New Musical Express and all these English magazines, and there's their names, it's just like that, and then you meet them and it's just like they're just like they're next door neighbors, man. They're the coolest people. Like everybody from London that I've ever interacted with has just been like just really, really, really cool, really great people. Like no attitude, no nothing, just just cool people.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have the support and to have all these DJs come play for our party and to play for DC and for the Baltimore area and for the East Coast, drum and bass jungle scene.
It's awesome. And something I was just thinking about was that you guys had access to record stores that were bringing in this sound. Was there, like, in contrast to, I guess, the Midwest, where we were having to like order and call in some cases, the record store at the time, because we didn't have access to stores that even knew what we wanted. Like, do you know who the buyers at that point in time, who the record buyers were within the record stores that were able to bring this stuff in and keep you guys supplied?
Yeah, for sure. Like, Andy was a buyer himself at Tower Records. Yeah. And we were always close to the underground record stores in DC, namely Music Now, which was on F Street, not too far from 930 Club and Fifth Column that we were just talking about. Music Now moved to Georgetown, and then that turned into Yoshitoshi Records. In Baltimore, there are a number of record stores. In Philly, 611. Nigel Richards and Diesel Boy Damien were part of 611. New York, there was Breakbeat Science. So yeah, there was a community there, connections with the record store.
Even on Peace Teeth, 12-inch dance records.
Dance, yeah.
I remember going there. They were the only people where I could find the AWOL CD when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's cities that have scenes. There's usually things behind it like record stores and clubs
The record
that
stores
generally
were
foster
kind of a center
that
for
whole
it.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was everything works in with one another.
My brother Ty worked at 12-inch Dance Records when he was in
Fresh.
college. And then Peter worked at his own store, and then I worked at Yoshitoshi for, 4 or 5 years.
Well, you worked at Music Now first, right, before it changed over?
Yeah, I worked when Music Now moved to Georgetown. I came in as a buyer for drum and bass at Music Now. The Deep Dish guys bought the whole store, and Music Now, Yoshitoshi record store. And then Peter worked there. I got him a job, I think.
Sure did.
And for 3 or 4 years, that was like...
That could be a whole podcast on itself.
Yeah,
Yoshitoshi,
that's a whole
man. Let me
nother-
tell you.
a whole nother
Having
thing.
Deep Dish as owners, but drum and bass ran the store. I mean, it was just there was no
When we were there, we would probably be playing drum and bass.
all the time, and there was Ali and Sharam, and they just let us do whatever we wanted to do, which was good or bad, I guess how you look at it. But that the incarnation of that store could be a whole podcast on itself, because there's a lot.
I'm gonna step over here.
A lot of stuff that went on at 3209 M Street, Northwest Washington, D.C.
What era were you at Yoshitoshi? Like what?
99 to 04.
Reminds me of a gift I got for you. I'll show this to the camera and then give it to you.
Oh my God!
Oh wow, where'd you pull that out of?
Well, I was going through my records that I was going to bring today, and I found these, and I was like, oh, I should give these too.
Oh my gosh, those are amazing. Because, this will be the second time you've handed me these. In '94, I came to, no, it would have been 2004. No, God, it must have been in the 90s, or late 90s. I was working for the museum, which was right across the bridge from Georgetown.
Okay.
And on my lunch breaks, I would come into Yoshitoshi Records, and I was just starting to get into drum and bass.
Uh-huh.
And I met you, and I go, hi, I'm from the Midwest. I listen to a lot of disco house, but I'm starting to get into drum and bass. What should I buy? And you handed me a J Magic tune.
Wow.
It was called Space Invaders.
Yeah.
It was a drum and bass remix of it. And then you were like, and you should also buy some new slip mats. And I have a very busted pair of these.
Oh, wow.
That were like, and I was just like, it's amazing. Because you said that and I was like, wait a minute. I know exactly where I met you for the first time.
Oh, wow. That is crazy.
Yeah,
That's a great story. Also, that record, that J Magic remix of Space Invaders, is such a tune. I still play that out now. The kind of disco-y energy of it is amazing.
Yeah, that 5-year period, DJ culture in the city was, everybody was a DJ. I mean, even now everyone's a DJ because, you hit sync and whoopie whoop. But when it was still vinyl, like before Record Scratch and Serato and all that stuff, you had to have the tunes. But, every store, Commander Salamander, Urban Outfitters, every store had decks in it and a DJ at some point in the week or nothing. Mm-hmm. It was,
So that's pretty wild. So, what year was that you moved here?
I moved here in 2002.
Okay.
I came here as an intern that summer. That would have been probably 99 or 98.
Okay, yeah.
And
so yeah, that was near the peak of
vintage.
that
Yeah.
store, and I would say, arguably of the DCC, or
Certainly a high
early
point.
2000s was that was a big time.
And
That's cool.
that's where I ended up going to also a lot of your parties because a friend of mine, my best friend in college, was from DC, and so every break we would end up in DC, and it was go to insert store X music store whatever, grab all the flyers and figure out what you're going to do that night, and then choose your party there.
Yeah, it's so cool to talk to you about this stuff like after the fact, right? Because I mean, I don't really remember meeting you back then, but hearing that story is great, and like it seems like our paths have crossed in many different like odd ways. So one thing we found out when Ocean came to, I had a flood at my house in DC, right? And he came. I offered for him to try to salvage a bunch of records that like got flooded. This was right in the beginning of the pandemic, but he comes in and realizes that he used to work with Courtney back like.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Courtney is my wife.
DJ Apple.
Yeah. Hi, honey. But yeah, it was wild because like I didn't know your first name, right? I just know you as the librarian. And you guys were like, hey, I think I know you. But yeah, over all these years, thank you for all that you've been doing more recently with your show and championing
Documenting
the weekly
it,
shows, and then these spotlight sessions, talking to a lot of the DC drum and bass crew. So thank you for doing what you've been doing and for connecting us, and for hosting us today.
Of course. And to make it even funnier, my wife used to follow Apple around to whatever party she was playing at back in the day. And so in between her and her friends, everyone knows everyone. And it's a weird small world.
That is weird. So did your wife know that you worked with her?
Yeah. So my wife and I met after Apple and I used to work together. And it was one of those funny comments I made one day. I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to go out tonight. I'm going to go see, I think at the time it was Apple Rocher. That's how she was, Apple Rocher. And she was just like, wait, you're going to go see Apple? Like, it was like her ears all perked up and she like looked at me sideways like, but it's not drum and bass. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I know Apple. And she was like, well, her brain just totally blew up. And
Wow.
Yeah, Courtney has one of the coolest mixtapes names that I remember was Ivana Hump. It's her son Ivana Trump.
Ivana
Thump.
Thump.
Yeah. Thump. I always
Yeah, that's
remember
good
that,
names.
man.
Yeah, we should all go out to dinner sometime.
that sounds like an awesome plan. And also, funny thing is, right behind you in all of those red sleeves are all your old records.
These?
Yeah.
These were the ones you saved?
Yeah.
Wow.
So each one has been pressure washed, cleaned, and I'll do an overlay at the moment showing like all the process. But they've all been, relabeled, refound, and I'm slowly going through and encoding them. So
I can take these now?
eventually,
They are yours. I am so glad that you saved them. For those that don't know, I think you did a YouTube video about it. It's awesome. You should see what he had to do to get the mold and
I
stuff
cleaned
like
all my
that.
records as well, about 6,000 of them, and it's just labor intensive, man. It's like
But yeah,
I can do
that is
maybe like 20 at a time, right?
awesome. It looks brand new.
Yeah.
those guys were pressure washed. So I took them outside and hit them with the pressure washer to get all the funk off it.
Simon at the Exchange.
That's the one.
So you changed all the labels.
Yep.
And wrote on them. That's amazing. I just got this out of order.
Oh, it's all good. They're not in particular order. The best part about that is that the A and B marker is also on the first drop. And so the first beat is always like lined up
Oh, yeah.
because, it's better than just marking it with tape.
So, since that time where you came and got the records and you did that project, I've seen that you've done some shows playing some of the tunes and stuff. I'm curious to know, like, are there one or two favorites that you found? Because I knew some of them that were in that, stack, but some of them were white labels. I mean, there may have been some gems in there. Do you have some favorites?
The Slammer, suburban-based Slammer is my favorite, especially because then it got re-released, and I happen to be fortunate enough to get one of those copies as well.
Cool.
There's a track at the moment that the name is escaping me, but it comes from the White House label, and it again, it kind of like touches upon that disco house, and that just makes me so happy. But no, I'm still digging through and finding gems in there all the time.
Cool. Thank you for doing that, man.
Of course. Now, there's so many things that I don't know about Too Tough and your histories. What are some of your favorite moments that you haven't touched upon yet?
You got 6 hours?
I got time. We can always take breaks.
There's so many.
Yeah, it's like, you want to try and go chronologically or what?
Well, certainly the armory parties with Ultra World. So those were, I guess, legendary, infamous daytime raves at the DC Armory.
12 to 12.
Where we were lucky enough to be able to host the drum and bass room at those events. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 that we worked with Lonnie to do at the Armory. So yeah, big shout out and respect to Lonnie Fisher.
Ultra World legend.
And LG of Sonic Soul, so it was Ultra World, Sonic Soul.
Kevin Gimbel of Circle
Tough.
Before he
Yeah,
blew
Kevin
up.
Gimbel worked. I think they did one of the events, but those the opportunity to kind of plan those shows and plan the lineups with the support and backing of.
This is the
of
first
Lonnie.
one.
Yeah.
Engage.
So that was 1990.
I think it was 99. And just look at this lineup.
Yeah, that lineup it's almost like a dream lineup now, right?
Even now I would go to as soon as the doors open.
I mean, Derek May and Richie Houghton.
Yeah, just not even like not the drum and bass for a second, but freaking Derek May and Richie Houghton. But then
to have Groove Rider.
Fabio, Andy C, Ed Rush, Storm and Bailey,
Yeah.
Ryan G. I mean, Groove Rider, Fabio, and Andy C on its own, with GQ no less.
Yeah.
And there was about the basement of the Armory. I don't even know where to start because it's just like everything keeps flooding back. But when we first got the venue, me and Andy and Daniel went to Lonnie's in Baltimore to chop things up and discuss lineups and stuff. And,
Yeah.
And then you get to the point of the walkthrough of the Armory. And I still
remember that story you were about to say about coming up with the lineup.
well, we
You were like, well, let's just go for it and see what he says.
yeah, like
And he was like, okay.
yeah, but
let's do it.
Like I said, me and Andy and Daniel, we went out there and we were just like, let's just try and see what he says.
Yeah.
And we were like, we want Groove Rider, we want Fabio, we want Andy C, we want,
Yeah.
and this was like, the late 90s and Lonnie was like, cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we, I remember we were going home and we were like, you don't really know, what's going on. And then, cause there's so much buildup, and then the night comes and it's gone like that. I can remember, just walking around the armory and then, like being on stage with Groove Rider and GQ, and just looking out. And even if you listen to the recordings, which are on the Mixcloud, which is another conversation, mixcloud.com/2toughArchive. If you listen to those Energizer tapes, the crowd is just it's bananas. And looking out from the stage, I don't know, it's thousands and thousands of kids in that basement, and it was just
the production at those events were great. Lonnie, we didn't pinch on the sound. That was one of the most important. And it was kind of challenging because it was like echoey down there, and I think there were 2 rooms downstairs. But,
the little circle had that little
but yeah,
corner.
they made it work. We made it work, and having Fabio at that event, I remember the beginning of his set. He started with this Caliber record on his label, Creative Source. I probably didn't get the record till like a year later, but it was really cool memory to hear that intro.
MC Flux.
Yeah.
Like I can just, it's almost like it was yesterday. There's certain things I can remember, certain things I can't remember, but just the vibe, it was it was different.
One of the stories I remember from that event was, it's in the middle of the party. I went to pick up Andy C from the airport, and it was tight. He was, had landed. His set was on. He was due to be on, and we were still driving. So, but the staff at the Armory were so cool. They were like, "We'll just drive straight in to the basement."
We had access to the building, to the back gates.
Were you with me?
I didn't go to that, but we were going back.
So I was driving. Andy C's probably like right here. We get up to the gate. The guy is like, "Oh yeah, go down that way." So the gate lifts, lets us in. The garage door
inside
opens.
the armory, inside the rave. It was just
probably like smoke is coming out while we're driving in with lights on. And the crowd is probably like, what's going on? Like, we could see the crowd. I remember kind of hearing a cheer because they knew that, like, everybody was like, where's Andy C? Where's Andy C? And so we drive straight in to the back of the stage. So cool, because I didn't have to, like, park and, like, walk in with them, down the stairs. Drive straight in, park the car right behind the DJ stage. He goes right on, and the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah, pre 9/11. That was
a cool.
We had access to the whole. I might still have the blueprint access to the armory.
I think there's some videos that have been popping up recently of different clips. So check out our Instagram. We'll post some up there. We'll share them with you, and you can share them on this broadcast.
That's something I wanted to bring up, was just for people that don't understand, explain to the people how big the DC Armory is. Because, you think Armory, and then there's DC's Armory, and it's a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
It's
huge.
Yeah, it's more than a football field probably on East Level.
Yeah. And
it's a gigantic building.
I don't recall how many people came to those events, but thousands.
Oh, it was more than 8,000 people.
Yeah,
I think I remember.
Close to 10 potentially.
For
some of the events as they grew on. We did a few more with some amazing lineups, but yeah, we were really lucky to be part of that, and it's fun to think back on them.
Awesome.
Should we share some more flyers of them? That was Engaged. What about?
It's Energized.
So this is Energized. This was
the second one,
1999. This one featured in the main room was Carl Craig and Doc Martin. looks like Derek Carter from Global Communications. We're in the house room. Groove Writer Fabio, Diesel Boy Dara DB AK. That was I guess that was pre-Planet of the Drums. MCGQ, he was always awesome to host. And back to back. So, and then there was some more.
There's one called Revolution.
Revolution was the yellow flyer. But yeah, we were
Very blessed.
blessed to be able to come up with some of those lineups and host some of those DJs. DJ Markey was at
The second one, I think, right?
Revolution, whatever. But that was the first time he played in the U.S., I believe.
Yeah, no, I forget about that, just because of how do you forget about Marky?
Yeah,
But you're sitting there talking about Groove Rider and Fabio and Andy C.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember the anticipation for that Marky set was thick.
Yeah. We also had DJ Die that night.
Yeah.
Marcus Intellects played at one of those as
Doc
well.
Scott.
Doc Scott. Rest in
Bailey
peace
played
to
for a few of
Marcus.
them. Just heavyweights.
Yeah.
Blessed is definitely the word.
Yeah.
Who have you not been able to get, and that you wish you could have gotten to brought?
For the whole in the history of the crew, that's I'm gonna do a little tangent. I told you I'm prone to them. Good friend of ours, Teresa. We were really close back in the mid '90s, and she went to London when the Blue Note was open, and brought me back a promo poster for Metalhead's night called the Grand Jam, and it was at some hotel or whatever. I think she climbed on somebody's back and ripped it down. I have it laminated now, with the tape on the back. It's literally from the Blue Note. It's like a historic artifact.
That's cool.
And it has the entire Metalheads lineup, Randall, everybody. And I can remember I had it hanging up at one of the stores I worked at in Vienna, and I would look at it and be like, I want to bring every one of these people. We just look at me like, I want to do every. And, we got a fair amount of them. What was the question was, who didn't we get that we wanted?
One of them that comes to mind, I mean, we did have Fabio at the Armory.
And a Starscape.
But we always wanted to have him in the club setting, but
Never did.
have not been able to make that happen yet. Caliber, I would love to have play, in a club setting.
It's a lot of them came true,
We've
man.
had
A lot of them came
We've
true.
had many of, I guess, our idols.
I mean, indirectly, Kimmy and Storm before
Yeah.
Kimmy passed.
Yeah.
But we had Storm several times.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't get Goldie for the longest time because his fee was so high and it was big, big clubs only. But eventually, I think, 2014?
2013.
2013?
Yeah.
Finally, and had him several times.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big moment. And that was kind of later on. I'm saying later on, that was like 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, right? I mean, we're talking about stuff that happened in the late 90s, which is 30 years ago. So definitely aging ourselves right now, right? But yeah, that was a memorable event at U Street Music Hall with Goldie for us
And
back
Bailey
in
back to
2013.
back. Crazy night. Go listen to that one too.
Yeah, that recording is amazing. There was something special about that night and his set.
I mean, we had Randall. I really couldn't. I'm sure there's a name outside of what Daniel mentioned, but I really can't think of one.
I can't think of
so
of
many that
one.
we have been lucky enough to have.
Fabio and Caliber in a smaller setting, for sure, is on my list still. And I hope I don't diss anybody by not mentioning them. But look through our flyers, and you'll see many of y'all have come to DC to play
Quite a
for us.
ride.
Yeah.
I was at that Goldie show in particular, and I remember that everyone was just on edge the whole time, just being excited because it was,
I don't remember East Street Music Hall being any more crowded.
it was intense. What has been it? There's always seemed to be a connection between Two Tough Parties and either the metalhead sound or the metalhead lineup. Where did that come from? Or, was it just a fandom, or, did the sounds just align that well? And so you just kept rolling with it?
I mean, that's kind of an easy one.
I mean, it's metalheads, it's like...
I'm wearing the hat. Back when I started DJing and was really focusing on the break beats and stuff, Reinforced was another one of those labels where I could actually have access to Reinforced Records, Roughage Crew, which is one of Goldie's projects. One of his first releases was on Reinforced. I was very into that Reinforced sound, the darker sound, and just the breakbeat experimentation of that label. And just being a fan, right, of the artist and that sound and just kind of that underground aesthetic. I would compare Reinforced Records to like Underground Resistance, to
great.
Metalheads, to like some underground hip hop.
Like Def Jam. It's like
just kind of being a fan of the music, and I clearly recall some of the first couple of Metalheads records I got. I have a couple of them in my bag actually. Was a Doc Scott and the Alex Reese Basic Principles. Those were two of the first Metalheads records I got, and I played every single track. I think there were 3 on the Alex Reese and maybe a couple of the Doc Scott ones. And from there, it's like any Metalheads record that would come out, I would get. Later down the line, I was fortunate enough to get on the Metalheads mailing list. So every month or so, I would get this package from the UK, and it's in this brown envelope, and it's a white label, and Chemistry and Storm would actually
write on them.
Right, what it was on the label. Rest in peace to Chemistry. Being on the mailing list, that was amazing, right? I would get these tunes months ahead for free, and how can I not be a fan, right?
You were so young too. You were so young
when all of these amazing releases from these producers that may have been their first release, and these kind of drum and bass anthems and classics. So I think naturally, we would want to bring these artists to DC and have them play.
I mean, it's really all about Goldie, isn't it? I mean, we had a conversation not too long ago about how, if you had to rate your top 5 DJs, and it's like, I don't even know if I could put Goldie in there because just locking him in as a DJ is almost disrespectful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no internet in the 90s. You know what I mean? Anything that I found out and we found out was via, magazines or, they used to sell VHS tapes of raves, of English raves. And I would buy them and just, and look at that. But, Goldie was such a force. Way before I even was lucky enough to meet him, he was just such a force, and he just put the sound on his back, and a lot of people contributed to it, but Goldie, really put it on his shoulders and just, busted through every door possible, and just so it's just it's just one of those things. It's like, that is drum and bass. It's a very diverse sound, but Metalheads is like, it's like the absolute center of it. What else can you say?
Yeah, I mean, certainly my favorite label. So, easy for me to push that sound when I'm getting these tunes. Plus, the tunes are always wicked.
I think I actually was aware of Moving Shadow first. Right?
Yeah, well, Moving Shadow did
right.
start.
Right.
Metalheads didn't start until '94.
Yeah, '94.
Moving Shadow was out.
And their early catalog as well is insane, man. Like the 10 inches, and it's just like those two labels for me, Moving Shadow and Metalheads, and Reinforced.
I think back to your question about comparing or how we've been pushing Metalhead sound or Metalhead's DJs. DJ Bailey is played a vital role. He played for us first back in 1997, I think, or 96, and since then he's been a strong supporter of us and the DC scene and the U.S. drum and bass scene in general, right? But he's a Metalhead's DJ and helped connect us with other DJs who we hosted since then.
And, that was another first. We were the first to have Bailey as well.
Yeah.
But he, if you look at his history,
yeah,
he was there. He's there at the very beginning of everything. Very beginning of everything. And probably my favorite DJ, if I had to pick one. Probably, as well as an unbelievable person.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the kindest. This is an unbelievable person. We've known him for 30 years now, and really looking forward to seeing him again this summer. But he's done a lot for me personally. A lot of my high points have come with Bailey, either in London or wherever. That's just a whole different thing, though. We could just go down so many tangents.
Yeah, he was kind enough to host us and take us around when we visited London to some different clubs and his radio show at Radio
One Extra.
One Extra, yeah.
Those are, it's like, that's another thing about Yoshitoshi. We would hook up the PC to the sound system, and we would play those shows every week. Mm-hmm. And we'd be emailing in for shouts, for both Flight and Bailey. L double too a little bit, but Flight and Bailey, personal favorites. And I mean, Metalheads, you can't, it is what it is.
It'd be interesting to get Bailey's memories of that as well at some point in time. It'd be fun to like flip that.
We may have some time while he's here if we could schedule something. So shameless plug, on July 3rd, 2025, it's a Thursday night, we are hosting an event called Too Tough Forever. It's a tribute to Too Tough Andy. And Bailey, Flight, Trace, myself, Ken Lazy, and Joanna O are new Too Tough members and resident DJs, and MC Dub 2, along with the upstairs room, which is going to feature DJ Feelgood, Rob Payne, Love Grove, Fort Knox 5. We're excited about this event as a tribute to Andy. So yeah, July 3rd, Washington, D.C.
I can't wait for that show. And just as a side note, just in case people are coming to this without knowing, we did lose Too Tough Andy not too long ago, a couple months back. So that's the tribute.
December 28th.
It's a big loss for the DC scene and
underground music in general. He promoted so many people that it's just tough. But yeah, hopefully we can, do a little justice by him with this little party. Yeah. And remember him for what he was.
rest in peace.
On that note, talking about Andy, what was it like when the gaze landed on you with him? Because, and I only reference this because I had the gaze land on me for a brief bit, and all of a sudden, it was like having the ultimate champion behind you and just pushing you. And it was, for me, it was very surprising. Like he popped into my chat one day and was just like, I knew who he was immediately. And from that moment, it was like, I would see him post my stuff or give that push. And what was that like, I guess in the earlier phase when you two first met and created Too Tough?
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's definitely been an evolution, right? But looking back, our friendship and connection started probably because he was like making copies of my mixtapes and giving them out, right? Without me even asking him to, or knowing even, right? So I mean that was early Andy, right? And you know, from copying a mixtape and passing it out to a bunch of people to like
having the phone number, you know, before that you'd have to call the phone number, and
yeah.
he would have the events, you know, like a voicemail, and you call for the events and the directions. Just always just the definition of a promoter, you know what I mean?
Yeah, promoter and connector, and yeah, man, you know, always supported me as a DJ and as an artist, helping me push the sound. Always just, you know, connecting me with other promoters or other DJs. I wouldn't even be able to describe like, or I wouldn't be here, right, without his support and connection, right, and then us creating Too Tough together and doing all the events through the years.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be here.
Yeah, so yeah, his influence and contributions is unmeasurable.
On a flip of that, tell us a story about a time that maybe something didn't quite go as you expected, might have failed even, and what you learned from that. I'm sure you've got a story to that end.
Yeah, I mean,
gravitational pull or Scotty at Danko. We had to move it to red.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where you know, we would plan an event at a club or a venue, and then we had to move it. One of those was that gravitational pull party.
Rob Playford and JMJ.
Yeah, Rob Playford from Moving Shadow. So it was supposed to be at the warehouse in DC. For some reason, got busted at the last minute, maybe like
literally
week
2 days
before.
before.
2 days before.
Yeah.
Not long before, we had to find another venue to host this event, and it happened to be in Hagerstown, Maryland, which is like, I don't know, 2 hours away from DC. But fortunately, somebody had a venue up there. If anybody knows what it was, please put it in the chat and let us know, because I forget. But it still went up. People actually still came up to the event.
Reasonable good party, yeah.
On the way back, it was like 6 a.m. I was driving Rob Playford and JMJ back to the airport without any sleep. And I started like driving, I was like fading off and like woke up and like shook the car. And after that, I had to roll the window down, right? I was like, I'm not gonna be the reason why
I killed Rob Playford.
Moving Shadow lost its founder. But yeah, that was interesting. Another thing we learned probably was not to throw events in January, February, March, where a snowstorm may affect it.
We still did.
We still do it sometimes at the clubs, but
that was also, by the way, it was all Andy and Daniel. I mean, both of them. we never had to cancel a party. We rarely had someone not show up, and if we did, we were lucky enough to get an equivalent replacement.
The Return of the Renegades one, that was also supposed to be in DC. It was actually in Tacoma Park, which looking back now,
Big mistake.
we can be like, what were we thinking? Like trying to throw a rave in Tacoma Park, right? So yeah, this one was was that Bookham on
Yep,
there?
LTJ.
Yeah, Bookham and AK 1200. So this was what,
1996 May.
These, I don't remember how we got connected to the venue, but we thought it was a good idea to bring in this awesome sound system that we had heard at another rave, maybe an Ultrawood party.
$18 is a deal.
They were from, I think, Poughkeepsie, New York, and I don't recall the name of this sound system, but basically they had a huge truck, rented this sound system from New York to drive down, set up, at this neighborhood warehouse spot in Tacoma Park. Cars are lining up. I mean, this thing was booming. This event was shut down before like 11 p.m. Because of course the neighbors in Tacoma Park are gonna be like, what the hell is going on, right?
Like 30,000 ravers on the streets.
So yeah, that was certainly a lesson learned, right? But fortunately, Lonnie from Ultrawood had his warehouse, and we were able to move it up there that night, which I don't even know how we did it logistically. Just people
you
found
just
out,
do it.
right?
Yeah, you
like,
just
we were
do it.
all right, we're moving the party there, and it ended up still happening.
And we were using a spot in Z Alley called Club Danko, which I don't even remember how we found that, but it was this awesome little spot off the alley.
Yeah.
Like this underground club.
I think it then became the Spy Club.
I don't remember. You're probably right, but we had Doc Scott that night, and we got to the club early and doors were locked. It was pouring down rain.
They hadn't paid their electricity bill.
So I believe Daniel probably got in touch with Fareed, and we had Red within 30 minutes.
Is that Red, or is that when we moved over next door to Z Club?
No, I think the only thing we did in Z was a virus thing, right?
Oh, okay.
I think we moved it. We moved it to Red because
Yeah.
someone had to stand in front of
Might have
Danko in
been
the rain and tell everybody, "No, go to Red, right around the corner."
Fortunately, I'm Slant, so I didn't have to do that job. I don't remember who did. Was that you?
Loved it.
So
Loved
you
every
had to
minute of
stand
it.
and tell
Hey,
people could
loved
we have just put up a sign?
it.
over there?
Yeah, you know how nights are. And
That's
it's
customer
just-
service right there, right? Peter taking one for the team. Yeah, that.
But really lucky with venues and events that we never really had to cancel or refund or anything like that. Very lucky, and again, very, very blessed.
Yeah, I think over the years doing these different events, we just kind of learned on our own. We certainly had people to look up to, but a lot of things we kind of had to do ourselves as well. You know what I mean?
And you guys have been I've made this comment before we started the recording, where I made the note that you guys were omnipresent in DC, especially in the early 90s into I'd say 2008 maybe. And then there was a bit of a dip. What happened in that dip? And was that just as far as the music scene in general, or was that something, the crew got older?
Yeah,
I don't think it was ever a crew thing, but go ahead.
it's kind of interesting. The scene did change, continues to evolve. It's interesting to kind of look back on, right, or to hear your perspective, and or just ask the question, right, like, what was I doing back in 2008 or 2010 when we started this thing back in 1994, right? So for me, it's been definitely a journey. I always feel like I've been in it, even though my engagement or energy probably has changed. Since I started DJing in high school, right? And throughout the years, from doing all these events, playing at all these clubs, certainly earlier on, I was very focused. And that's all I did. I didn't really have a day job, right? Like, besides, I think actually working full time at the record store was one of my first, like, real jobs or steady, jobs that I spent a lot of time at, besides DJing. During that time, I may have focused more on music, DJing, events than I did on my family and friends or like my real life or career, right? Like it just wasn't, that was back burner stuff, right? And I think, as the years continued, I had to kind of grow up a little bit, right? Get a real job. I was helping my mom at her restaurant. Relationships. I did get married
Life and
back
stuff.
in 2018. But yeah, I slowly focused a little more on family and life stuff. I think for me that may have meant maybe a few less Too Tough events or me taking less gigs. But I think, like for me, it just feels like I've, continued. And even though our involvement may not have been as
Heavy.
omnipresent as you're saying, as the early 2000s, I don't know if there's any, big thing that defines, that certain period of time.
Well, the city was changing as well.
Yeah.
The city was changing a lot, and there's less opportunities, spaces harder to come by, and yeah, life, life happens. But we had we were very lucky with venues, throughout our life, whether it was is the Crowbar or Chief Ike's Mambo Room. Red was a very special place for us, and a lot of other people as well. But for us, Fareed and Deshaun,
Big up for Reed
and
ESO
and the lounge, and
crew.
there was less opportunities. DC used to be not grimy, but not a lot of velvet rope clubs, like New York and LA. But in the 2008, 9, 10, it really kind of, there's more lounges and nightlife was more of a thing, and the underground kind of didn't disappear, but it just kind of, everything ebbs and flows. Life does that.
Yeah.
And there was definitely less opportunities venue wise. But we stuck with it, and U Street became really big for us around that time.
Oh yeah, like U Street Music Hall.
Patty Boom Boom, Tropicalia.
Yeah, more venues started popping up and allowing us.
So it's, and other promoters as well. Andy mentioned Dom 3D and Cadence. So
Yeah.
It wasn't just Too Tough anymore. It was
there are tons of other
doing
promoters,
quality events, quality
For sure.
DJs. So it just it took a natural course, right? But we're still here, man.
Thank you for alluding to the change in the city, because that was part of what I was getting at, I guess, in some regard, because I assumed it wasn't necessarily all just you, because it would seem to just be all over. at the time I called it the Great Drum and Bass Recession. Is that whenever I talk about it, I'm like, there's this moment between '08 to like 2010, and it was like around 2010, dubstep took off, and all of a sudden promoters, I felt like, and this is completely like my own conspiracy theory, if you will, they didn't want to have an entire night of bro step. And so they would bring in drum and bass to like balance out the mix. And all of a sudden it would seem like, and then there were more drum and bass parties all of a sudden. And it was this really interesting watching it from afar, because at that point I was just starting to get back into the scene. And like '09, I took a little bit of time, stepped away, and it was in '09 I come back and was starting to go to parties and DJing again. And I was like, where's the drum and bass parties? You know, and it was like, it didn't feel like it was that long ago that there had been many. And so then I was like going back through, oh God, there was Drum and Bass Archives. There was a Reddit forum. There was also another like internet forum that I'm totally spacing on right now, that, you know, it's where I've learned about parties. And I just like go back, and I was like looking through timeline to be like, oh yeah, there were just less events.
Yeah.
There was opportunity. If Red would have never closed, you know, that gap wouldn't have been so noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah, I think, you know, just different phases, different generations of promoters. But yeah, DC has been, you know, it's grown. Like one of our goals was to, like, you know, build the DC scene.
promote
right?
the sound, man.
We wanted-
Doesn't mean we had
We
to
wanted
do it all.
more DJs to come and play drum and bass. We wanted more promoters to do events, and that has happened. And so, you know, Dom at 3D, he's been great for the DC drum and bass scene.
Big parties.
And always, you know, very
Respectful.
and humble, and sharing how we've been an influence on him, right? So, you know, kind of things come full circle, right? And now he's throwing some of the biggest drum and bass events in DC, which is amazing. And Cadence started back in 2012, and I played the first few Cadence events.
Yeah, big up Sean and Annie and
with Sean and Andy.
all
yeah.
those people, man.
Yeah, so respect to
Great promoters.
Jeff and Sean and Annie and the Cadence crew, Dom.
So, you know, the sound is healthy, man. It's DC. It's always been in DC and always will.
What's the future of Too Tough right now looking like?
Next question.
It's a tough one after Andy passing to really be able to define that, but I do know with Ken Lazy and Joanna O joining the crew recently,
We're in a great spot.
you know, we're inspired to continue
Keep pushing.
flying the flag. Certainly I think it'll be mostly one-off events here and there. And, you know, besides events, I think we'll just continue to do mixes and play at shows.
Support and just keep it going.
Yeah.
But yeah, losing Andy is you know, it's just I don't really want to say different, but I don't know another word, you know, because when you lose the backbone and things aren't going to look the same. But you know, we're hanging in there.
When both of you are building sets for the night that you're going to play, how do you go about building your sets?
We're pretty similar, actually. I'm not really a DJ anymore. I used to play here and there, but not so much. But when we would talk about it, we both like to. I'm just gonna be real short, and he can go. We like to plan, kind of go through tunes and tune by tune by tune, and get it. At least that's the way I used to do it, and get kind of just start where I want to start. What's the first thing I want to play, and then go from there, and not really wing it. So pretty much know, what first tune's gonna be, what the 17th tune's gonna be, and that's the way I would do it.
Yeah, for me, it's always been more ad lib and improv, and things have changed so much with DJing out. From when I started, when I'm carrying bags or crates of vinyl into a club or a venue, and over the years, from CDJs to Serato to Tractor, record box, to all the tools that artists and DJs have now. Prepping for a set is just so variable for people. Like, I couldn't really give advice unless I knew what your setup was going to be.
Well, I would assume it's easier for you now, right? Because you can just have USBs as opposed to having 150 records.
I think there's an argument both ways, right? Like, yeah, it's easier, but then if you have 2,000 tracks on a USB, what are you gonna play if you're set to an hour, right? Or if you have access to all this music digitally that you can download from here or there or whatever, how are you gonna make yourself stand out, or how are you gonna pick your tunes? For me, currently, how I do it is I intentionally limit my digital crate, so to speak, right? I will typically create a new folder or crate for the gig that I'm going to play. And in that folder, I will only put in tunes that I really want to play from whatever sources that I have at the time. Might pull a few from a previous gig or the previous gig. Oh yeah, I really like that one. But and then I have different folders of classics or anthems or faves, right? That may be on the same USB but in a different folder. So for me, limiting what I have on my current folder and just keeping it to the ones where, if I know my set's only an hour, 2 hours, how many tunes is that, right? 10, 20, 30, depending on how fast you mix. But just knowing that any of those tunes in that folder, if I play it, I will have wanted to play it, is makes it a little easier for me. And since I started, I'll always go into a set knowing at least one or two tracks that I want to start with. Whether because it's brand new or it has a great intro or it's going to be a good transition record, for the very least, I'll know at least one track or one or two I can choose from to start my set with. And then I may pick a track that okay, I want to get to this point halfway through my set. I want to build it up to here. So I may have a track that I want to play in the middle-ish of the set, and then back in the day, I think closing records were more of a thing than they are now. I think, I think back then it was oh, what record is Scott Henry going to end with on that night? For him, many of the times, his was the last set of the night, right? So that kind of last tune of the night was always like typically a classic or like a favorite. So for a while, I would always kind of have that last tune. And in drum and bass culture, with MCs, you'll often hear like, all right, this next one will be the last one for DJ, blah, 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 right? So they'll bring the music down. The MC will announce this is the last tune for this DJ before the next DJ comes on. So that last tune was kind of like that culture, you know, will it be an anthem? Will it be the newest track you have right now or something, right? So back then I would kind of have a last tune kind of thing in mind. Nowadays, not so much.
So a slant set in 98 and a slant set in 2025, which would you have more tunes at your disposal?
Well, I mean, nowadays with the
Right, you
USB,
have more on the
you
USB,
have more
right.
now, yeah. But back then, I was limited to how many record crates I would bring to the club, right?
Me too, usually.
But I'd typically be able to do it with one record bag. But kind of similar idea, right? When you have thousands of records, like which ones are you gonna play? So there were always favorites in my bag that would rotate in and out, and the bag I pulled today actually were just all favorites that I played over and over.
That's another thing people don't get, record crates, man. Do you know how heavy a crate full of metal dub plates is? And you have to carry that through a club, through a dance floor.
Yeah.
Different, man.
It's different now.
Heavy, they're
I think-
heavy.
Yeah, the great thing about technology is that nowadays there are less barriers for people to get access to music, and I think that's a great thing. So if you're a DJ out there,
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get
you
that
know,
tune, right?
do your thing,
Right.
play the music that you love, and it will come together.
I can remember when that switchover first came, like we would always, pick our people up from the airport or whatever, or from the hotel, and normally just to be polite, carry their records, and I can remember Doc Scott once, I was like, you ready? He was like, yeah. Like, where's your records? Just pulled out some thumb drives. It was right in my pocket. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
the new era.
The topic of the new era, when you go to get inspired by a mix nowadays, who do you go find? Either on Mixcloud or SoundCloud. Like, who is the artist that you're like, I want to go listen to their most recent?
I mean, personally, I'm still a first wave, kind of guy. I don't really discover too much fresh, real new talent right off the bat. I might hear of them later on, but I'll Bailey's usually my go-to for, I could probably name 15 other names, but if you want one, if I want to, even for the most upfront stuff, for the most tomorrow sound, I'm probably going to go listen to a Bailey set.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Bailey is still a leader and inspiration.
Are there any other moments you want to share? Those are kind of
Talking. How long have we been talking?
better, just shy of 2 hours.
There's so much
Really,
that
it's
we.
been
Yeah.
2 hours?
There's so much that
Wow.
we've skipped.
I
I
gotta
bring this up.
Yeah.
I gotta bring this up. It's like it's this. There was a weekly at Red that Daniel and this guy Julius did called The Lab, right? And then after that, Daniel and Andy and I went to the Crowbar, which was this biker bar. I want to say 20th and K. Could be off by a block or two. This building, and another building's not there anymore. Right on the corner of K Street, big parking lot with a big hill going down. Parking wasn't a problem. And we went in there and talked to the manager. I think his name was Bill. I think he does DC9 now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He still does DC9. And linking the venue and starting urban space and that whole era with the John Bone Flyers.
Yeah, Urban Space was one of our first weekends.
Yeah, and just like the guests that we would have there, and finding the venues and everything was a cash back then. You either had we kept the door, and the club would keep the bar, and just that kind of vibe, and when we lost the Crowbar, Andy found Chief Ike's Mambo Room, 18th and Columbia in Adams Morgan, tiny place, but Trace played there, and Tech Itch and Decoder, and this I don't want to say dive bar, but certainly not a lounge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, they were basically dive bars, yeah.
And just doing it like that, the DIY aesthetic, doing it like that.
Yeah.
And then when we got back to Red, I really enjoyed that place, man. And the lounge too, but Red.
Yeah, that was a special, intimate venue with great sound system, right?
And the relationships we had with the people that ran it,
Yeah,
was just
great owner who allowed us to do whatever we wanted, bring in whoever we wanted to. So Bailey and Flight certainly were regulars there. We also hosted Chai Effects there.
Yeah, Chai Effects,
which was
Scotty,
amazing.
Friction.
Dr. Scott, yeah.
I mean, so many people, but just the times, just the nobody gets along all the time. Sometimes, there'd be a little tension, between the crews or like, the prep for the parties.
Probably caused some stress here and there.
This, like even going back to the armory, the walkthrough, and then what are we going to do with this building? It's like this rugged industrial big cement posts, and just figuring things out and watching it unfold, and then it's over, and you move on to the next one. Just doing it as a unit, just from the meetings, at Andy's house on Portner Place, to picking the flyers up from National Airport, to handing them out to the night, to standing at the door wondering where everybody is at 11:15, and then at 12 o'clock there's a line, just stuff like that. And we could probably stay here all day and talk about stories. Like, we haven't even touched the adventures that we had in London, and even the adventures we had in America. Like, so many. Andy, like I said, we were listening to your interview with him on the way over, and he was talking about PHI in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And the amount of times we went back and forth between Philly and DC, I can't even count, And Carl and Joe and when Damien had that club across from 611, what was it, Shampoo?
Platinum.
Oh yeah, Platinum, right. Just doing it, just being in the middle of it at the time. At the time, you're not really thinking about it, but being able to reflect on it is we would leave Platinum at 2:30, 3 in the morning, and I can remember several times me and Andy on the way back in his old silver RAV4.
Yeah.
I'd look at him and he'd be like, and it's just like we would pull over on 295 and get out of the car and like run the hills to get some energy to get the final 20 miles,
Yeah.
Just being young and being in it and doing it, and being lucky enough to be exposed to these people that you see in magazines, and you actually meet them, and it's just like they're just so regular and kind and reciprocal. Like when you go to London, they put you on the guest list and they take you out. It's like inverted, and it's just so. I mean, there's a lot of stories that I know I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
That I would really like to talk about, but the actual party always just goes so fast. It's 4 hours, or it might be 12 hours, but it's like that, and our nights tend to work out where the night of the party 9 times out of 10, Andy was in social mode only, and if there was a technical problem, Daniel had to handle it. If there was a transportation or something, I might have to handle it, or I would be at the door with the money, or it's just the way it functioned. It was just it was fun.
Yeah.
It was just fun. Sometimes it was stressful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you didn't want to see that person again, but it was fun, and going out to eat and building relationships with these people. It's the whole everything that's involved in being a promoter of a sound. It's just like right now I got like 10 things that I want to do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah.
Just the adventures and the experience that we actually went through. I'm very blessed to really have met Andy, and to Andy Daniel. I've been lucky enough to be a part of it, because it's a lot, man.
It's fun to share these stories and kind of reminisce, right? And for you to ask these questions. Clearly, we couldn't do any of this without the support of people like you and everybody who's been to any of our events, or anybody who's taken the time to listen to a mixtape or check out one of my sets, or anybody who's shared a mix. All of the DC drum and bass scene, DJs, promoters,
managers, venues, everybody.
Venues, everybody who
The
have
people.
supported us in the past, thank you, and we wouldn't be here without y'all.
Back to the story tip, Daniel and I were lucky enough to be in London quite a bit, beginning of the 2000s. For several years we were over there.
Yeah.
For extended times, a lot. And
I was joking earlier about how his nickname is the Yoshitoshi guy, because we were at the end in London at the bar and just getting a drink or something, and then somebody came up and they were like, "You're the Yoshitoshi guy," right? Like that happens like worldwide. Like we were at a Bjork concert in New York, and somebody was like, "Hey, it's the Yoshitoshi guy." Like Peter is
Radio City Music
recognizable, and I'm like, "Hey, what about me, man? I'm Slant." They were like, "No, the Yoshitoshi guy." But yeah.
One time, I mean, I could really, I'm just gonna go with this one because, at the time, me and Daniel were over there, and we were staying in London, and we went to Brighton, right, to
Oh, you're telling the Groove Rider story?
Yes, to the show.
We were in London. We were at Fabric, right? And we just happened to be like going to the next room, and we saw Groove Rider.
Was it at I thought it was in Brighton.
It was, but I'll help tell the story. So we saw Groove Rider, and I was like, "What up, Groove?" And he was like, "Hey guys," and he was with his friend Inch, and
Driver.
They hop into an elevator, and we just walked in with him, right? Because he was going up to the floor where he was DJing, and so we just hopped in, and I think maybe one of the Fabric managers was like, "Who are these guys?" And Groove was like, "They're safe." So then we went to the room where he was DJing, and we may have gotten into the booth that night. Afterwards, he was like, "Hey, I have a gig in Brighton, and Doc Scott's playing there. You want to come along?" We were in London, and Groove Rider's inviting us to go to a gig in Brighton. So we hopped in the car.
In his car.
Yeah. And he drives us. Not only that, afterwards, after Brighton, same night, he had a gig in Portsmouth with Fabio. So we got the chance to roll with Groove Rider from Fabric to Brighton, where we saw Doc Scott play and Groove played a set. After that, then we drove to Portsmouth, and Fabio's playing as we get in there. What a cool experience.
because they'll do 3 or 4 gigs every weekend night,
Yeah.
and we really got to tag along for the whole thing. And at the time, Groove's a big hip hop fan,
Oh yeah.
and 50 Cent was, and he played that same mixtape.
50 Cent was the thing at the moment.
Over the whole ride, it was all 50, and then he played this thing, a parody by 50 Pence, and it was a parody, and I went crazy over that tune. And 6 o'clock in the morning, we get back to Groove Rider's house, and he's like, "Let me go in and burn your copy of it." So he goes in and brings it back, and I was just like, it's just like,
cool.
Stories like that. It's just,
And then he asked his driver to take us back to our hotel. So
yeah.
that was just cool with him. A few things I did learn from Groove Rider just through experience, right, was one of the first ones from that Guadalajara party was I was due to play after him that night. And being a young and dumb DJ, right, I was like, it was like, 2 a.m., my set's on, I'm like kind of going up to the DJ booth and like, kind of like sneak in, like, are you going to play? I didn't say anything to him, but then I was just like, I think I should let me just let him play out, right? I'm not going to bug him, right? Like, it's freaking Groove Rider. Let him play as long as he wants, right? like for me, for a minute, I was like, well, my set time starts now type of thing. But then I was like, he's Groove, let him play. He played like 20 more minutes and then cued me over after that. And I was like, yeah, that was the right thing to do. Another funny moment was I was playing a gig in Boston with him. I remember the night because that was the night that Princess Diana passed away in that car crash. But his set that night was crazy. His record label Prototype, he had just released, I think, Alien Girl by Ed Rush. And he played it. It got 3 rewinds that night because it had just come out. It was a memorable moment for sure. But I remember when he first came in the booth, I was DJing and he was going on next. And he was like, "You got a light?" And I was like, "Yeah." Gave him my lighter, right? Took the lighter, he was putting on his first record, used it. Then he slipped it back in his pocket. I was standing there waiting for him to give the lighter back to me. And like for a second, I was going to be like, "Yo, Groove,
my lighter,
Groove, you got my lighter." But then I was like,
it's Groove Rider.
You just gotta let Groove Rider have your lighter, right? You don't ask for it back. I was like, all right, I'll just get another lighter. But but yeah.
And going to all the legendary places in London, like the End, which isn't open anymore, and Bar Rumba and
yeah, I was fortunate enough to have gone to Speed as well. That was Fabian LTJ Bookham's night. I also did go to the Blue Note.
Tell
Chris.
Tell the Voodoo Magic story. The high school when you.
The Moving Shadow event. So
he's in high school. Okay, now it's just high school.
I was. My mom worked for United Airlines as a cook, and so back then. They were called like buddy passes, I guess. I could fly for free anywhere I wanted to because I was her, part of her family. So I went to London quite often. So I guess my friend Chris and I went to a moving shadow party called Voodoo Magic. And I mean, we're young, scrawny kids, right? And it was in Piccadilly Circus. I forget the venue, but pretty well-known venue. And a crew of people like surrounded Chris, like kind of pushed me out of the way and just kind of surrounded him and asked for his wallet. Basically, he was getting mugged because we were an easy target for back then, right? But fortunately, he was like, "Hey, if I give you the cash, can I have my wallet back?" Because it had his ID in it. But yeah, we got mugged, or he got mugged. They didn't mess with me. Maybe it was because I looked tough, like some people think. or
That was a
something.
big rave, and Voodoo Magic. I love that story, man.
That was
High school. What are you
Yeah.
doing this weekend? Going to party, drink some beer. Going to London, going to a big
Yeah.
rave.
one thing I remember clearly about that event was Andy C set, and back then, this was like, I don't know, 94, 95.
Yeah.
He was still a young DJ, but he had a headlining slot. The mixes that he was doing back then were, so memorable, standing out from the other DJs, and the crowd reaction to his mixes. Like, I clearly remember that. I was like, who is this guy? Right?
The executioner.
Yeah. That was a special moment.
Yeah, and being in London it's just it's like New York and hip hop, right? London and drum and bass, and we were lucky enough to go to a lot of the One Extra shows at the BBC on Great Portland Street,
Yeah.
like sitting in the studio, And I was lucky enough to go to the not Blue Note, but the Metalheads Sunday night reopening in Shoreditch, and just all the big clubs, and Bailey took me to Terry Turbo's last rave at the Brixton Academy, which it's like a real big 930 club, and just like I said, those people are so kind and genuine that anything that we did for them that we were technically contractually obligated to do, but we're responsible for. They reciprocated to us over there, and it's a great ride, man. Great ride.
Wow. Thank you so much for telling all these amazing stories.
It's like a tenth of them.
And I think that there's just gonna
Fun to reminisce.
we're just gonna have to do a volume 2 at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. We've hit the 2-hour mark.
And we haven't even got to really past 2014. I haven't talked about.
This stuff since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to continue on, we can. We can also take a break.
I think just thanking Will Eastman and Ken Lazy and Scott from U Street Music Hall for giving us the opportunity to do shows there.
In the Owl Room. And,
Cadence, the Owl Room.
yeah, big up
Flash.
Cadence, man. Yep, Flash.
Big ups to Flash, and again, just thanks to everybody in the scene who support drum and bass, who've supported us, who are doing things. Keep doing it. We'll keep doing it too.
Awesome.
I have a gift for you.
Oh, yeah?
Another one.
Let me grab it.
Another one. You're just full of gifts. This slip hat completely blows my brain.
It's funny because you're like, you already gave me these.
Well, they're just like, it's like until you pulled it out, I was like, wait a minute. Now I remember the story.
So this is for you.
What are we up against?
It's nothing super fancy, but so you and I talked a little bit about whiskey and how you're a fan. So that's just
This is beautiful.
a bottle to thank you for what you do,
Dude, thank you.
in DC and worldwide for the drum and bass scene with your show and for hosting us today and letting us share our stories.
Daniel mentioned Chadwick doing a lot of our artwork. These are a couple of his flyers.
Yeah.
This was from Flight in 2006. There's another one with Spirit from 06 as well. Chadwick had his own style, with his own graphics. So yeah, we've been blessed to run across many people with the same kind of love that we have for it, and again, big up Andy, big loss.
Yeah.
But,
rest in peace, Andy.
Hey, the sound thrives.
Excellent. Thank you. And
Cheers.
care for a dram.
Yeah, let's try it. I
Excellent.
haven't tried that before, but we could probably do another separate show and talk about whiskey. I think that'd be fun.
That might be. We have to set up like a side table.
You didn't get to the breakfast burrito.
No, we didn't tell that story.
Didn't tell
That's
about
fine.
the book when we had to go to New York and get them and bring them back.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah.
You just need to come back.
Yeah. He played 9:30 Club and missed his flight somehow.
No, that was right.
Was that 211?
9/11.
9/11. And
So there were no flights for him to get out of Mexico. Fortunately, they found one,
In
or
New York.
what was it? Like he was stuck in Mexico, and they finally opened up the airspace, but the closest they could get was New York. So I think Peter and Andy drove to New York to pick them up to drive them to
day of the
see-
show, morning of the show.
Yeah,
Wow.
Andy's like, yeah, we got a little problem.
Juice Records.
So I met him in Crystal City, and we rented a minivan, roughly noonish, right, 1:00. Drove all the way up to Newark, picked up Bookham, Conrad, and was Nookie there too?
Yep,
Yeah,
Nicky was.
brought him back. Pulled into that little alley at the 9:30 Club around the side for the guest interest. Walked up the back stairwell, and it's like I said, so many events that could have been canceled, or we found a way to push through.
That's awesome.
I'd take those back, bro. You give enough some classics. Yeah.
No, sir. These were a gift. If not, they were going to get thrown away.
That was
Ragtime Decipher.
Yep.
Dang, is this?
You want that one back?
This is just Jungle Sky.
Mm-hmm.
I must have had 2 copies of this because I have this already.
Nice.
But that's cool that this was part of it. Trouble on Vinyl, 1997. This is so cool to see what you've done, man.
Slant restoration project videos. Oh god. So yeah, like I was pressure cleaning things and just the whole, and that's the one I'm looking for. Or should we try operator PC? Actually, it might be easier to just go here. So yeah, I soaked all the records first. There were 2 2 bins on either side. One had clean water, the other one had bleach. And then I was pressure washing, all the paper off that I could. But I was also taking pictures of it all before.
Right, because he was going to
So I knew what I was up against. And so I was
Yeah.
trying to keep it all in order.
Are they
So you can
soaking in
see-
that red cooler thing?
Yeah, they're all soaking.
What do you
Soaking
have?
Dawn.
What
That's
is that? Is that just soap and water?
Yeah, it was just soap and water. It was old school Dawn.
But before each one, he would have to look at the label,
Yeah.
or at least look at the etching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, and a lot of them, some of your white labels didn't have any etching to
Yeah.
them. So that's where I was like, if it didn't have the etching, that's why I'd go to the photo and be like, okay, what came first in my lineup? Because I was trying to keep them all in order back then.
Uh-huh.
And be like, okay, it was this one, so then that one might have some writing on it that might tell me what it is. And somewhere I was even Shazamming and be like, does anyone know what this is?
Dang, Fabio and Photech?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, there were some friggin' tunes in there.
Don't you still have a bunch of things that need to be cleaned in your mom's garage?
I do still have a stack. If you ever wanted to reset up your setup there, we'd have to plan it. And I do have a
trio.
Doc Sky record that is worked. I was wondering if you could help me.
Dude, I got a flattener. We can make that a thing.
Do a different episode on that.
Hell yeah.
Oh shit, Dylan Joe M&D.
Mm-hmm.
But like the photos of it, let's see if I can. Yeah. Maybe these things were funky. I was like, love it. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Oh shit.
And I don't
You
want
took
to know.
pictures of each one.
I took pictures of each one
Crazy.
before.
Breakage.
Just so I knew what I was up against.
Certificate 18. I haven't seen that
cool.
logo in a minute.
DJ Records.
Oh yeah, this one was. So sometimes I'll blow it off, the first pass, and the glue would have another label on the bottom.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, was this like a blank that had already had its?
Or they put the wrong sticker on.
Yeah, it was like, or like, was there like some double sticker thing? It was like all the questions, like some of them like I didn't get, and some, but I was like asking people like, is that a normal thing?
Oh.
But yeah, I got a lot of
Renegade.
these.
Renegade Recordings.
Yeah.
Cause
Freaks. Sir. Yep.
Dang.
That's why I was completely suited up. Like I was like, I don't know what this is.
Man, what a project he did.
It was 600 records. All said-
Really?
yeah,
600?
600 records all said and done.
You gave him 600 records?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Like do I have the start?
I didn't realize there was that many. This was a classic.
Yeah, it was just like, here's like, good luck. Like that was, some of this like the brown paper bag like was totally just stuck
So
to
do
it.
you have everything digitally?
I'm encoding it all right now, so eventually it will be.
Nice. Well, if you would be so kind to share that,
Yes, I
we'd
will.
call it even.
It was also like, you find the sub-base merchandise catalog in there. Like, oh. And then like notes like that one. We're just like, oh.
Oh, that's
fun.
cool.
Yeah, there's so much paper. I was just like, but like when I found the slammer, I almost lost my cool. Because it was that one, and then there was Jungle. It wasn't Jungle Gym. Fuck. I'll think of it, but it was just.
Suburban Basement.
Oh man, I was
D-Cruise.
so excited to
I
see
don't know why I brought all these damn flyers.
because I'm gonna take photos. So,
Oh yeah, did you want to photo some of the ones that we were trying to show?
yes, please.
Remember these?
Dang. You still have that?
Yep. No, you're imagining.
Wow.
That was a. Hey, I'm special.
Yeah, you
Let me in.
Yeah, let me in. Didn't have to wait.
No weight, no cover.